joining us for the 11th episode of Burning Questions, a podcast focused on reducing risk in your communities and answering some of your questions along the way. In each episode, we focus on one safety topic that we get a lot of questions about. We'll do our best to answer some of those questions, and we'll try and clear up any misconceptions about those topics while we're at it. If you have any questions you'd like for us to answer, please leave a voicemail for us at 864-430-0510 or email us at bsfdpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll try and give you an answer in a later episode. Today we're going to be talking about candle safety, and to do that we have a guest today, Firefighter Kim Quinn. So Kim, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Chris?
Doing wonderful. So when it comes to candles, I know that there are some dangers associated with having candles in your home. What are some of those dangers that you can tell me about?
Well, there's a few, and I actually love burning candles myself at my own home. I've even thought about it just sitting on the couch, just watching the candle burn, like, what if? But one of the first ones that always came to my mind is if I were to ever leave the room or even leave the house and forget that the candle is burning. How should I prevent that? I can very easily leave the house, and so one thing I sometimes will do is I'll put a sticky note right on my doorknob. That way I don't forget to go check the candle and make sure it's out before I run to Walmart or go down to the grocery store for something.
I can understand that, especially if you're burning a candle in, let's say, a bathroom or something like that. It would be real easy to forget that it's burning, or if you leave the room or it's downstairs or wherever it is.
Right, if you leave that candle burning to kind of mask a smell or something, or kind of forget it's there a little bit.
So when it comes to, I guess we would call that unattended candles, right? Don't leave it unattended.
Correct.
So when it comes to a fire that starts with a candle, how does such a small flame from a candle turn into a larger incident or a fire that could damage your home or destroy your home?
Well, there's a couple different ways. The first answer to that would be direct contact with something. If you have, say, an open window near your candle and you have curtains, that wind might blow that curtain into your candle and igniting your curtains. Or you could have a pet or a child accidentally knock that candle and that flame now is on the floor, on your rug, your carpet.
Okay, so that gets into not just leaving candles unattended, but also the dangers of having a candle that's been placed in the wrong location, right?
Yes.
And with that, I guess you would want to make sure that you have a sturdy base, right? And then plan that if that candle or that base were to become overturned, where's that fire going?
Especially if you have young kids, oops, they didn't notice the candle, they just knocked over.
And that would be true for pets as well, right?
Yes, especially you think of a bigger dog swinging its tail, it might not realize it just knocked a candle over. Or a cat goes jumping up on your counter. So you want to make sure that your candle is properly placed in a good container. That way it's less likely to tip over. So if you have, say, cats, you may not want to use a tall, skinny candlestick. You might want something a little bit heavier, a little bit shorter.
Okay, and with picking the right place to put the candle and making sure that it has a sturdy enough base, is there anything that you can tell them about safe ways to operate your candle? Because I know personally when we burn candles in my house, sometimes that wick gets really long, and when you go to blow it out, you'll see little embers fly off. What advice can you give our listeners about safe ways to maintain and use candles in the home?
First, I would say to watch your candle wicks. If they get too long, it's going to shorten the life of your candle, but it's also going to end up putting a lot of soot and smoke into your house that you really don't want. The second thing is that I know many of us are guilty about just blowing out a candle. It's honestly the fastest way to probably put a candle out, but you run into two risks with that. First off, you could blow an ember onto something that is flammable and therefore start a fire. Second, if your candle is well melted and it has a lot of liquid wax, you could very easily just blow some of that wax off onto something that's flammable and get wax everywhere, and could also cause a fire hazard that way.
So Kim, if blowing your candle out isn't the safest way to put a candle out, what other methods do you recommend?
One of the ones that I've adopted here recently is honestly just put that lid back on that candle, or find like a ceramic bowl or a metal plate or something and just set it on top. You're going to smother that fire and take its oxygen away from it so it won't be able to burn. And then you're also containing that hot wax so it can't spill out anywhere as well.
Okay, when you say put the lid back on, if it's a smaller candle and the lid doesn't have any kind of silicone, that sounds great. Would you recommend using the lid if it were made of wood or had silicone on it? Would you use that for one of like the 3-wick candles?
No, I am saying put the lid back on it if it's like a glass lid or a metal lid. But if it is a wood lid or it has that silicone on it, especially with the 3-wick candles or more wicks, I would go ahead and put something else on top of it.
So Kim, before we move away from candles, is there anything else candle safety-wise that you'd like to share with the listeners?
Yes, there's one more thing that I'm very particular with my personal candles, and that is just where am I placing that candle? I don't want to be putting it on top of something that's rickety or can easily move, but like a countertop, a good sturdy table are great places to put it. Also, if you're going to be burning that candle for a long length of time, and especially if that candle's in glass, that can heat up pretty well. I like to put like a ceramic or a rock coaster down, and then I'll put that candle on top of it to prevent that tabletop or whatever from heating up as well.
Well, that's smart. It keeps you from discoloring any wood that it might be sitting on, and it keeps you from heating up anything that doesn't need to be heated up.
Correct.
So we've talked about candle safety, all the hazards that are presented when you burn candles in the home, as well as how to mitigate some of those hazards. What about people who don't burn candles, but they do burn things like incense or sage? When they burn those in their home, do they follow the same advice, or is there something specific you'd like to tell them?
I would say to the listeners that do use incense, it follow a lot of the same things we have said with candles. Knowing your right placement, what you have it in, don't put it on something that's going to turn over or tip, and just be careful when you're putting it out. It's still hot, it still has fire to it, and it could ignite anything flammable around it.
And the only advice I'd give people who are burning incense is a lot of the incense holders, especially if you're burning stick incense, those ashes are meant to fall down onto that incense holder, but rarely do they all fall on the incense holder. So just making sure that wherever you're burning that incense, that those ashes are contained. We've had a fire in our district where we lost an entire apartment building because somebody improperly disposed of the ashes from incense. So know that those ashes, they still contain heat. Make sure that they are completely cool before you dispose of them. Personally, when we burn incense in my home, those ashes end up either going down the sink or in the toilet, just to make sure that there's no risk of it igniting paper towels or anything that might be in a trash can that could lead to a home fire later down the road.
And that goes for candles as well. You want to make sure that that candle wax and that candle is well cooled before you go store it in the closet or store it in your drawer in your bed or something like that.
Now, would you recommend that if people do choose to burn candles or incense in their home, should they develop a fire safety plan or a fire escape plan? And if so, what are the different items that are in that? Can you describe those for them?
Yes, I would definitely advise everyone to have a fire safety plan, whether they do candles or incense or anything else. It's never bad to have one, and it could save your life one day, even if you have that thought of, this will never happen to me. I don't know how many times I've heard that from somebody standing in their front yard watching their house or their property burn. One of the key components to this is just having a game plan for if the worst thing were to happen. What would I do? Where would I go? What would I grab? What would happen? And obviously, you want to get out. You and your family are more important than anything you have in your home. Everything else can be replaced. So you want to get out of the house. Don't worry about any of your other stuff. Make sure you are safe first. Then you want to be able to have a good meeting place. For instance, you don't want your kids to be out in the backyard and you be in the front yard. Oh no, where are my kids? And go back and look for them, and they're perfectly fine. So you want to find maybe a good tree in your yard, or maybe the neighbor's mailbox or your mailbox. That way you can all meet in one place. You know everyone's safe and sound. When the fire department gets there, you can tell them, hey, everyone's out. They're right here. We're safe. Now they can just focus on putting your fire out.
That's really great advice. The only thing I would say is if you live in a home where you don't necessarily have a tree in the front yard, or you live in an apartment building, it really doesn't matter what that location is, as long as everyone in the apartment or the home understands and agrees that that one location is where they're going to meet. So for people who live in apartments, it could be that you meet at the mailboxes for all the units, or that you meet at the neighboring building. it really doesn't matter as long as everybody's on the same sheet of music or on the same page.
Right, and I actually live in an apartment myself, so the building right across the parking lot, or in my apartment complex, there's little islands of like grass where the dogs can go. Just go stand there. As long as everybody knows where it's at, you'll be fine. And also, don't forget to practice this with your kids. Maybe get in a routine of once, twice a year, and just kind of go through the motions of what you would do. And just make sure your kids fully understand it. And try to teach your kids what to do, but then also how to stay calm in the process and not just freak out and want to hide under the bed like most kids want to.
That sounds really good. We do have one listener question that I was going to send to you if you want. They asked, are battery-operated or flameless candles a safer alternative, and when should they be considered in a home?
I would definitely say they're safer than a normal candle. First, you don't have the open flame like a normal candle would, so there's a lot less risk for fire danger there. Second, you don't have the hot wax. This is also a really good idea to use battery-operated candles when you have, say, a lot of children, or you have those pets that go crazy at times, those cats that love to jump up on your counters, the big dogs that love to wag their tails really hard. This type of candle could be knocked over, but it's not really going to cause any fire risk like a normal candle would, and you're not going to end up with a whole bunch of wax all over your nice carpet. Also, if you're very forgetful, this is a very good product, because if you just so happen to leave the house and forget you have it on, not that big of a deal. You might have to replace your battery, but it's probably not going to burn your house down.
That's really great advice. So just to recap, we talked about the dangers of candles or the hazards that are presented with candles in the home. We talked about proper placement of those candles, using sturdy candlesticks or candle bases, and making sure that if you are burning candles or incense or sage or whatever you're burning in your home, you're doing it as safely as possible. We did discuss the battery-operated candles as well, how they're a good option. And we talked about the importance of a fire safety plan, not just if you burn candles or incense in your home, but for everyone in general. So I wanted to take this opportunity to thank Firefighter Quinn for being with me today and answering some of these questions. Thank you, Kim. I really appreciated you coming in today.
You're very welcome, Chris. And just thank you to everybody else that has been listening. And just please share this info with everybody else. The more people that know good fire safety, the safer everyone will be.
That's really great advice. If I can have all of our listeners do one thing for me, it's just to go through your house, inventory your candles. If the glass is cracked, if the wax has burned extremely low, it's time to get rid of those candles. If the wicks are getting really long, maintain those candles like they need to be. And if you burn incense, please make sure that any ashes that are produced are disposed of properly. This podcast was made possible by the Boiling Springs Fire District in Greenville, South Carolina. I wanted to say thank you to all the listeners today. I'm Captain Chris Camacho. Stay safe out there.